Like most of you, I spent the weekend endlessly scrolling through the horrifying photos and videos celebrating and calling for violent assassinations of anyone conservative in America at the No Kings rallies. This is not just a sad, cringy movement of boomers upset that Donald Trump is president. The left wing of the American political system today is inherently violent, and it's time we start being honest to do something about it. I am still stunned to see the development of what took place at the No Kings rally over the weekend. Not because I'm shocked that these people are insane, but the type of insane is actually becoming evil. Evil is bubbling to the surface more obviously than perhaps ever before in my lifetime. In the past few months, as you guys know, when they've done all of these No Kings protests, my only level of pure shock was how old the crowd was, especially as they were painting themselves with this punk rock, super cool, anti-establishment branding that is anything but anti-establishment. We'll get to that with who's funding this insanity at the end of the show today. And sadly, the old, white, culturally out of touch, screaming boomer mantra did repeat itself last week too. We have a couple of clips to show with you. This is what the crowd looked like at the No Kings protests across the country this weekend. I'm sorry, but like it actually is the most pathetic thing I've ever seen in my entire life. And it wasn't isolated to just those clips, those videos at that one specific protest. This was the average demographic at every single No Kings protest everywhere, all over the country, which begs the question, are they just busing people in from nursing homes at this point? Are they painting it as like a field trip, an enrichment activity to help the old people not be bored? Like, I actually feel bad for these people. It is legitimate elder abuse, although not quite as abusive just standing there as making up dance routines that these people have to participate in. Watch this. I'm shaking in my boots. Democracy has been saved thanks to AARP's dancing flash mobs. And when you get a closer look at these people's faces, I think it's important. It's not just the hair color you see in a sea of white throughout the crowd. When you see the wrinkles on these people's faces, I want you to take a very close look at this. This is Portland, Oregon, presumably. Do you see anyone under the age of like 35, 40, 50 even? There's one. Maybe she took her grandma. This looks like Woodstock, but 50 years later. And the same people who participate. I mean, it's insane, right? It's insane. And before everyone comes at me and says, Isabel, you're so ageist. Isabel, you hate old people. Isabel, blah, 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 blah. Because that was primarily the chief complaint and rebuttal I got on TikTok the last time I complained about these old farts taking to the streets to tell the youths what we should believe and what we should be angry about. I don't have a problem with old people protesting. I have a problem when the media and the political establishment and every piece of propaganda in our society then uses the footage from these protests to try to convince you that the young people of America are rebelling against Donald Trump and MAGA and conservatism. There is nothing organic. There is nothing grassroots. There is nothing young or rebellious about any of these protests. It is literally the same people who built the political establishment of our lifetime who still want the political establishment to exist, then claiming that they are the anti-establishment punk rock heroes, when in reality, it is young people who are filled with legitimate wisdom to say there is something incredibly broken about the way you people have allowed America to barely scrape by for the last several generations. Matt Walsh said this beautifully on his show yesterday. There is nothing more pathetic and decrepit than witnessing age without wisdom. Chef's kiss. Could not have articulated that better myself. And I would venture to guess that for the most part, we're actually watching a generational paradigm shift about wisdom no longer being blatantly associated with age in this country. I would venture to say that most of Generation Z is actually more wise than baby boomers in our country. And that's not a knock on an entire generation or saying everyone is blanket stupid who is older than us. Please don't hear me say that as I'm articulating this. What I am saying is there is a level of finesse and wisdom that young people, out of necessity, are having to come into our own with right now, because we can't blindly just trust whatever the newsman, the TV man, is telling us with every passing day. What you saw at the No Kings protests over this last weekend, and we'll unpack this a little bit toward the end of the show, is the last generation of people who just blindly trust the experts. The last generation of people who watch CNN and MSNBC and every other cable station 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, nod along and do whatever the big man in authority positions tells them to do. That is not a position of wisdom, despite the fact that their age is substantially older than young people. But what I want to start the show with today is letting you know that this was not just a slow-moving, geriatric, lazy group of people complaining about the state of our country and how it's not leftist enough. This was a crowd that was out for blood, literally. I think we've been content for a really long time to believe the aging out part of the American electorate was completely harmless, that they were just something to point and laugh at and say, oh my gosh, how unbelievably pathetic is this? How sad is this? That this is how politics used to be done. In my mind, I think we associate the boomer aspect of American politics with like members of Congress who are posting cringy TikToks desperately trying to connect with the youths, like Representative Rosa DeLauro, who has posted several unbelievably cringy, pathetic TikToks over the past few months, but just recently shared this one in the midst of the government shutdown.
Honestly, I was speechless when I woke up to your voice. Now you told me how you've been feeling.
The youths, baby. I'm showing up to work, baby. Please, I beg of you, Rosa, keep posting these. Whoever is running this woman's social media account, they're probably 65 years old and they're asking their granddaughter how TikTok works. Keep it coming. Please, I beg of you. But that's no longer the image of boomer politics in America. Because I think most of you, can't unsee what we saw last weekend. And nor should we, actually. Because it turns out there is a massive contingency of people in this country who genuinely are calling for your death, and violently at that, if you disagree with them. Or to put it more plainly, if you are part of the majority of people in this country. I hope today's episode makes it incredibly obvious to you that we are living in a time where lies are so easy and the truth is being erased at every single possible moment. And nowhere is that more devastating than in the continued fight and battle for life. That is exactly what Natalia faced. When Natalia first learned of her pregnancy, she considered abortion, like millions of other women in the United States, largely influenced by the lies and messaging that she had been exposed to all the time in our broken culture. But everything changed for her when she first heard her baby's heartbeat. In that moment, she felt a divine calling to continue her pregnancy, trusting that God would make a way forward. Natalia chose life, surrounded by the love, support, and the resources that she needed to make that decision. At preborn network clinics, this happens on average 200 times a day because of support from people like you. Moms who are overwhelmed and pressured suddenly see their child through the magic of an ultrasound and realize that they're not alone. Their baby is with them through every step of the way, too. That moment of truth costs just $28 to sponsor an ultrasound. And believe it or not, seeing your baby on an ultrasound actually doubles the chance that a mom will choose life for her baby. It is not hard to understand why the magical experience of seeing your baby on that screen for the first time, when they're no longer an abstract idea, but a real person with fingers and toes who's waving at you and laughing and smiling, is life-changing from the very first moment you meet your first baby. Ultrasounds are so important for moms, especially those in need and vulnerable to the lies and propaganda of the abortion industry. This is not the time for silence. It is the time for courage, a time for truth, and a time for life. You can give now by dialing pound 250 and say the keyword into your phone, baby. That's pound 250 baby, or visit preborn.com/Isabel. That's preborn.com/Isabel. What I saw scrolling through X, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube over the weekend, well, I felt like I was on death's doorstep with a horrible stomach bug. Thank you for your prayers, by the way. But as I was sitting there just chronically online for the weekend, in sheer horror, is something that I will never unsee, because I think it marks a paradigm shift in our country's electorate that we can't come back from without drawing a very clear line in the sand to say, enough. How do you coexist with people like this? We've pulled together just a few clips in the interest of time for our episode today to share with you about just how truly violent these protests got. And frankly, I would show you more, but no one really wants to sit through hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of this stuff. I did over the weekend, and I wanted to literally blow my brains out. We could have made a 10-hour episode on this. I can't tell you how many clips are out there like this, but I hope this stirs something within you to realize how deep the rot has gotten and how loud the demons are getting. There are infinite clips from the No Kings protests at cities across the country, not isolated incidents or isolated cities, but a pattern of behavior of these mostly old protesters calling for the death of President Donald Trump. This video has a guy walking through the parking lot on his way home from one of these protests, wearing a rainbow, ironically, so inclusive, rainbow t-shirt, calling to 86 or execute 47, the 47th president of the United States. Listen to his analysis.
8647, explain it to me. I like the colors.
Kill the son of a...
Kill who?
Wow, he's 47th president.
Really? What's your name?
Dick Safer.
Glad we got that on camera. You know that's illegal, right? You don't threaten the president. You don't threaten anybody. But that's the problem with your guys' side. You guys get so emotional, you feel you need to threaten people. But don't worry, we're spreading love, and we're going to fix it. We appreciate you. God bless. God bless you. God bless.
No shame. No shame. Absolutely no shame. What's your name? Here's my name. I will proudly tell you that we need to execute the sitting president of the United States of America. And then looks baffled when you say, hey, you really shouldn't do that. That's actually illegal, by the way. Shocked. Blown away that the majority of the country doesn't agree with a bloodthirsty lust to execute the sitting president of the United States of America. Again, countless videos just like that one of people actually calling for the violent assassination of the president of the United States. And not just from random old guys walking through parking lots, but here's this photo from a current Democrat County Party chair in the state of Pennsylvania, that's the woman, holding this guitar, saying Foxtrot, Delta, Tango, using military acronyms to basically say F Donald Trump. And you see written on this guitar, 8647, execute President 47, 47th President of the United States. By the way, this type of language and this type of cute little numeric terminology, 8647, was literally being spread from former members of the Department of Justice several weeks ago. So this is not just random protest lingo and cute signs for people to write on t-shirts and guitars and posters all over the country. This is actually being espoused by like ranking Democrats in positions of influence and power in the United States of America. Do not make the mistake of thinking that these are isolated incidents. Posters all over the country calling for the execution of Donald Trump, like this one, were shared on social media from the No Kings protests. Wanted better snipers with a target over President Trump's face. Could you imagine for 5 seconds? Actually, I can't even imagine for 5 seconds. Numerous posters looking just like that one with Joe Biden's face or Kamala Harris's face or Hillary Clinton's face or Barack Obama's face behind a target shared at protests on the right. The thing that they get offended that right-wingers protest with is too many waving American flags, because that's what Nazis do. If waving too many American flags is a symbol of nationalism and is so threatening to our country, what is the string of t-shirts, instruments, signs, homemade posters, consistently calling for the violent execution of the sitting president of the United States of America? It's love, apparently. It's tolerance. It's kindness. It's peaceful. I hope that it is obvious to you this is no longer peaceful. Other people were caught on camera during man on the street interviews in cities like Philadelphia, for example, explaining they're just asking questions. They're just kindly positing different theories as to how it remotely could be possible that the left didn't organize effectively enough to execute Donald Trump by this time in the year of our Lord 2025. Listen to this woman.
Can you say that?
Can I say it?
Yeah.
Why can't anybody seem to actually kill the president? Because no one's been successful and good presidents are dead.
Do you endorse political violence?
No. I encourage thought-provoking questions. Like, why is that actually going on in 2025 where someone can't even manage to do that to our president? And I'm not saying they should, but I'm saying if that's what's on the table and what's happening, why?
So you have a civil rights attorney for protesting, or?
Yes. And I actually just spoke to someone who was a civil rights attorney passing by who stopped and talked to me because he thought my sign was a little extreme, and he agreed that it was okay.
How do you afford a civil rights attorney?
A lot of the times you can just call them and ask them questions and they will come out to you or out to whatever activism you're doing and give you guidelines. But for me personally, I do this so often and you can see I have an anarchy sign on my shoe. I'm so against everything this government does to everyone. It doesn't matter that he does it. I won't even say his name. It's like glorifying a murderer. That I've kept in contact with that person. And basically anytime anything comes up for me, I give him a call. And if it's a situation, it's $100 and he helps me out.
Awesome.
And I've never been arrested. For any protesting ever.
So, FBI, ding, 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 ding. Please pay attention to this woman because chances are she's a member of Antifa. She has an anarchist tattoo and says, I do this so often that I have a civil rights attorney on speed dial that I pay $100 to every time I'm in trouble and I get out of being arrested. Sounds to me like a multi-billion-dollar Ponzi scheme that some of the wealthiest left-wing anarchists in our society are funding. Again, we'll come back to that at the end of our episode. But do you hear the logic of these people, or rather complete lack thereof? I refuse to say the name Donald Trump. It's like saying Voldemort. I refuse to say the name Donald Trump out loud because me saying his name is like endorsing a murderer, calling him a murderer, in the same breath that you're saying, I'm just stunned. I'm stunned that no one has effectively been able to execute and murder Donald Trump in the year of our Lord 2025. This is how deep the rot has gotten. And we laugh as a society and we smile and we say, how crazy? That's so crazy. This is more than crazy. This is incompatible with a peaceful society. Last night, preparing for the episode for today, I was talking about all of these crazy clips around the family dinner table, and I am so excited that all of our family meals are being cooked with our friends from Grazia. Everyone knows I love to cook for my friends and family, and lately, what's taken my food to that next level is Grazia. Grazia is my olive oil of choice. It is delicious, easy to use, extra virgin olive oil at an affordable, everyday price. Grazia is always fresh. They pick, press, and bottle all of their olives in the same season, and you can even see the harvest date on every single bottle. They have not one, but 2 extra virgin olive oils to stock in your kitchen so that you can choose between squeeze or glass bottles. There's Sizzle, their everyday cooking oil that is perfect for roasting, sauteing, and, well, just about anything else that you cook. And they also have Drizzle, a super punchy, flavorful finishing oil that is great for dipping bread, whipping up a salad dressing, or even drizzling over ice cream. Don't knock it till you try it. It is seriously my favorite olive oil ever to use in the kitchen. We have totally all out ditched seed oils in the Belcher household and replaced everything with either butter, beef tallow, or importantly, extra virgin olive oil. And 99% of the time, I am cooking with Grazia in our kitchen. I am always hosting dinner parties, so quality olive oil is essential in our family's kitchen so that we can have it not just for our family dinner table, but when we're sharing with our friends and extended family too. The freshness of Grazia is so different from every other leading brand on the market. I can taste the difference in quality between them and other olive oil brands. And I always like to have both Sizzle and Drizzle on hand because they're both delicious, both to cook with and to eat with, and look awfully beautiful on my countertop. From October 1st to the 21st, it is their famous annual site-wide sale. It is time for you to stock up on all of your olive oil for the whole year. Discounts are automatically applied at checkout. Absolutely no code needed. The images that hit really home for me from the No Kings protests happened in and around the town that I grew up. The Denver No Kings rally had some very jarring images from their so-called peaceful protest. We have a few to show with you today, but we'll start with this one. These young, should I assume women? I'm afraid to assume one direction or another, went viral over the weekend for wearing these t-shirts to the Denver No Kings rally. And it might be a little hard for you to tell, so we'll leave the image up on screen for a while I'm talking about this so that you can take the time to actually look. The person, being of unspecified gender with the darker hair, is wearing a shirt of someone shooting themselves in the mouth with a firearm and their head exploding with the words, "Politicians don't die like they used to." And the being of unspecified gender wearing the vagina hat. So I safely think I can assume that this person is a woman, but you never know. Apparently you don't need a vagina to be a woman anymore. And the keffiyeh scarf, of course, because they always have to espouse every single manufactured moment of outrage at the exact same time, right? Is wearing a shirt that is the image of Donald Trump being shot, but instead of the bullet grazing his ear, it went through his head and his head is exploding. And it says, "Make assassinations great again." While, of course, they hold signs that say, "Silence is compliance." Silence of what? Silence of refusing to agree that we should violently execute the sitting president of the United States of America? That's compliance? With what? A peaceful society? These are not isolated incidents. I want to drive that point home until the cows come home for the rest of this episode today. None of this is one singular isolated crazy person anymore. And it's not just about President Donald Trump. Nor is it just about calling for, hey, I'll do it. I'll execute them. The truth is, if these people weren't comfortable doing the job themselves, they at least wanted to celebrate the death of our current sitting president, Donald Trump, who again won the national popular vote in the last election. The guy who the majority of the country proudly voted for and is wildly happy with supporting, yeah, he needs to be dead, according to these people, at cities all over the country. This woman was celebrating her birthday at one of the East Coast No Kings protests. This was captured by a group out of Maine. So I don't know if they were actually protesting in Maine or she was at a nearby city, maybe Boston. Not sure. Don't take my word for it. And she's holding a sign saying, "It's my birthday. I'll cry for democracy if I want to." When asked what her birthday wish is, here's what she had to say.
So this is your birthday. So you came out on your birthday. You thought it was important. Tell me why.
Absolutely, because I have two little boys who deserve a bright future of freedom and democracy. And this is a nightmare that I'm living in. And I'm here to make a difference and to be loud and proud. And there's no other way I'd want to celebrate my birthday than with my parents and my best friend fighting for our country.
So, okay, so for a birthday present, what do you hope happens? You know, you wake up tomorrow morning.
I hope that I see the obituary that we're all waiting for tomorrow. That's what I hope for.
You wishing that President Trump is dead?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Do you hear the cavalier, crass attitude of these people as they say this? They're smiling, wearing these t-shirts. They're laughing, holding these posters. They're joyful. They're almost singing. Absolutely. Saying the best possible thing that could happen to our country is if the president of the United States died or was executed today. That would be a birthday present to these people. This is within our own country. And if, God forbid, the left couldn't mobilize, like the woman out of Philadelphia was asking for, to figure out how to take him out, how is it possible that we haven't done that by now in almost November of 2025? At least maybe a blood clot could take him out. Natural causes could take him out. "Let's go blood clot" was a poster held up at one of the No Kings rallies across the country. Again, look at the demographic of the audience here. Angry, bitter, old people. When it wasn't enough for these people to just directly threaten Trump or wish his own demise or his own death and destruction, these calls for violence escalated to many other high-profile conservative figures or members of law enforcement who happened to be working under President Trump. One man was captured on video in Seattle holding a poster that said, "Would you like to kill Nazis with me?" And when asked who that was supposedly targeting, his answer was very clear. If I was given the opportunity, I would take it to kill White House senior staffer Stephen Miller. Don't take my word for it. Listen to him express this.
Who are you going to kill?
Nazis.
Who do you define as a Nazi?
What do you mean? It's pretty...
In this context, who's a Nazi?
Stephen Miller's a Nazi.
So you're going to kill Stephen Miller?
If I had the chance, yeah, I would.
I don't know if that's something I'd say on camera, bro.
If I had the chance to, I would. Stephen Miller's a Nazi, and that was said so casually, as if there's clearly a bottomless pit list of people that obviously are Nazis. And it is our civic duty to protect our democracy, because that's, after all, what these No Kings protests are about, to kill these people. Consequences be damned. There are no consequences, anyway, in places like Seattle, where members of Antifa regularly physically assault conservative journalists and people trying to document their insane anarchy. They don't even get arrested for this stuff. In Chicago, one protester picked up a microphone to express his desire to kill ICE agents, with this clip going viral over the weekend.
You gotta grab a gun. We gotta turn around the guns on this fascist system. These ICE agents gotta get shot. and wiped out. The state machinery, that's a full display right there, has to get wiped out.
They have to get wiped out. We have to grab guns. We have to shoot these people. We have to shoot these people, not the express. I hope something bad happens to you today. We have to grab guns and kill these people. This guy, by the way, in the least shocking turn of events of all time, is a college professor. He's a college professor at Wilbur Wright College in the Chicago area in Illinois. And it wasn't just Chicago. Like I keep saying, and I will keep repeating until the point bears its way into a burr hole in your skull, these are not isolated incidents. In Richmond, Virginia, on the campus of Virginia Commonwealth University, the same campus, ironically, where I and Kristen Hawkins were attacked by Antifa for our very first Antifa run-in as speakers on a college campus. The VCU campus was destroyed with graffiti after the No Kings protest with this message in all caps, "Kill ICE," double exclamation point, and with a cross with a target painted over it. What ICE has to do with Christianity, not exactly sure. But again, these people have to hate everyone the media man, the owners of the propaganda, the powers that be tell them to hate. Whether that's President Trump, those who work for President Trump in the White House, those who work for law enforcement agencies currently dictated by President Trump's policies, or anyone else. And when that's not enough, by the way, they then admit who they really want dead. And it's anyone. Anyone who remotely agrees with President Trump's policies or just general conservatism, which, again, is more than half of the country. This protester held a beautiful poster that went viral on social media with a crude drawing of a guillotine next to a MAGA hat. So we should behead more than half the country. Look at her smiling. Smiling in her designer sunglasses, joyfully calling for the beheading of half the country. This is like ISIS type rhetoric. Off with their heads. Down with the infidels. Except the infidels are the majority of the country. And she smiles. And we laugh. And we post about this on X. And we say, how crazy is our society? Ha 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 ha. But that would never actually happen. That would never actually escalate that far. I don't know about you. I don't feel comfortable seeing these clips, listening to these people say they want to kill you, sometimes by name, a la President Trump or Stephen Miller. And also knowing what has happened in the last year and a half or so in our country when we have watched the attempted assassination of President Donald Trump because of rising temperature and rhetoric like this. And more recently, the successful violent assassination and execution of Charlie Kirk, directly resulting from rising temperature and rhetoric like this. I don't feel comfortable laughing and saying, gosh, these people are so psycho. Ha 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 ha. Own the libs. Post the video on the internet. They're serious. Every one of these posters is serious. And I think we need to take the opportunity and the wake-up call, the slap in the face, to look in the mirror and realize these people are serious. And they're telling us exactly what they want to do to achieve Marxist-style domination, left-wing authoritarianism, don't you dare disagree or we will behead you, style governance in this country. And this became really obvious to me when I kept scrolling and I kept seeing by far the most egregious displays of behavior at these No Kings protests were the outright celebrations of Charlie Kirk's violent assassination. Let's just remind ourselves that it has not yet been 2 months. It has not yet been 60 days since Charlie was brutally killed on an American college campus for the crime of expressing a difference of opinion, for the crime of inviting people who he disagreed with to sit down and have a civil conversation, for the crime of encouraging college students to expand their worldview and think liberally in the literal definition of the word, and expose themselves to different ideologies. What college is ironically supposed to be all about. But that alone, that cornerstone of a true constitutional republic, of what these people are claiming is a democracy, what they claim to be fighting for on city streets all over America, is so much of a threat to violent left-wing extremism that is the norm of the American political left today, that they spent these protests to save our democracy, celebrating Charlie's death and calling for a continued rise of violence for anyone who thinks like him and supports him and works with him. People like myself and all of your other favorite Daily Wire hosts and any current college student who's a member of Turning Point USA, or anyone who has been moved to change their mind on something, thanks to an event that Charlie Kirk spoke at on a college campus. The most obvious example of this happened at the Chicago No King's Day protest, where some young, very bold patriots who I adore and I am incredibly grateful for decided to do a little drive-by in their truck and wave a Charlie Kirk flag out the window of their pickup truck along the street that was lined by No Kings protesters, just to say, you know what, you don't speak for everyone in Chicago, to issue actual freedom of speech. And the immediate response from one woman, who of course is waving a Mexican flag in a Save American Democracy protest, was to simulate being shot in the neck and to laugh. And I want to just keep this playing on loop for you guys as we talk about this for a minute. She's laughing. She's saying pow, 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 bang, bang, bang. Shooting herself in the neck. These are the same people, by the way, who claim that they want to end gun violence. Ironic. As these young men are driving by holding a Charlie Kirk flag. In perhaps the second least surprising turn of events of all time, this woman has been identified as a public school teacher at Nathan Hale Elementary School in Chicago, Illinois, teaching pre-K through 8th grade. I can turn it off for you guys. Pre-K through 8th grade. Allegedly, she has now been fired, but we don't know that to be the case officially. The school has not put out any statement. In fact, the school's only response to people realizing who this woman was to scrub their entire X account from the internet, which seems like confirmation enough that she taught at the school, and to make their website be under construction with the staff directory so that you could not confirm whether or not this woman is a licensed teacher in the Chicago Public School District teaching at Nathan Hale Elementary School. Allegedly, she's been fired. But there has been no public statement from the school disavowing this behavior. And that should tell you everything you need to know about Charlie Kirk's hometown and how broken the public education system is. It's not a coincidence to me that the vast majority of these psychotic freaks are teachers in the public school system. But they're not alone. Old people at the No Kings protest decided they wanted to try out some new costumes this weekend. Like this guy, who decided to cosplay as Charlie Kirk's assassin. Waving an American flag, wearing the exact same outfit, not something remotely similar or in the same general venue, the exact same outfit as Tyler Robinson the day that he shot and killed Charlie Kirk, as he smiles and waves an American flag, acting like this is his patriotic duty to celebrate an assassin. And when it's not enough to dress like Tyler Robinson and to celebrate Charlie's murderer, other No Kings protesters decided to dress up like Charlie. Like this man, I'm assuming is a man. Again, you can never really tell with these people. Wearing Charlie's Freedom t-shirt, the Presidential Medal of Freedom, mocking the fact that the president honored him, with blood spurted all over his t-shirt and his face. Standing in front of an American flag. Because this apparently is how we save democracy. While we celebrate the violent execution and assassination of the people who disagree with us, who have the free right to do so in a democracy. This woman's sign went incredibly viral, mocking Erica's grief in the wake of Charlie's assassination. Which one heals faster? A, Trump's ear, or B, Erica's heart? And when other supporters of Charlie Kirk, Turning Point USA, and the conservative movement took to No Kings protests to have interesting civil discourse and conversations with people to say, hey, maybe this issue is a little bit more nuanced than you think, or even just to display that our country, our values, the majority of our electorate is not espoused by these psychotic freaks. This is the response that people get. This young man wore a For Charlie t-shirt at one of these protests, and the only thing you hear in response is incoherent screeching from an old woman who can't even handle seeing the word Charlie on a t-shirt.
You get triggered because it has Charlie on there, right?
Because he was a racist, because he was a misogynist, and that means that you are too, because you support him. Get out! Get out of here!
He hated people. Yeah, just
he
calm
hated anyone
down.
that wasn't white, that wasn't male, that wasn't straight.
Lovely. He hated people, which of course is not true. He hated anyone who wasn't himself, which of course is not true. But because we have allowed the systematic programming and propaganda from the most powerful people in our society to convince you of that, in the mainstream media, in our educational institutions, in the entertainment industry, in our politics, in the American church, violence is justified, according to the American political left. The last photo I want to show you about Charlie is the one that's really disgusted me the most, frankly. And it's also from Denver's No Kings rally, just like those t-shirts I showed you a few minutes ago. Maybe it's just because it hits closer to home and I grew up outside of Denver. I went to high school in Denver. These are my people. But at the No Kings rally in Denver, Colorado, allegedly sponsored by the Denver Communist Party, which makes perfect sense here, you see this image be posted, and this has now gone incredibly viral on social media, of what appears to be Antifa-style radicals taking selfies, saluting. You see the guy with the baseball hat saluting in the background, doing their left-wing thing. I believe the sign behind them says globalize the Intifada. I'm assuming, it's hard to tell with their faces covering some of those things, but I'm putting that together. Globalize the Intifada. So violent religious jihad on behalf of radical Islam. At the Denver Communist booth are two white women who live in Denver, Colorado. I'm presuming are probably pretty privileged white women, throwing up peace signs, smiling, calling for peace behind a sign that says Charlie Kirk had it coming. Change my mind. I want to leave this picture up here for you just to look at for a few minutes, because I hope that this is as unsettling to you and so blatantly obviously demonic to you as it was to me the first time I saw this picture. I've looked at this for probably an hour of my time now, collectively, the 50 times I've looked at it. Look at the facial expression on these young women's faces. Ha! They look like sixth graders posting at a middle school dance, laughing, peace, make love, not war. We represent the good guys. As they are standing in front of a sign that is calling to globalize the intifada, to normalize jihad, behind a table calling for the normalization of communism and radical Marxism that is responsible for the death, either execution or death caused by the policies of radical left-wing ideology, Marxism, throughout human history, of hundreds of millions of people. And standing behind a sign mocking Charlie Kirk's mission, which again was to have open dialogue and discourse with people that you disagree with, and the response to be peace. This is disgusting. And it is perfectly indicative of today's American left. Privileged, white, afforded the opportunity to speak your mind, and this is your crusade to bring peace and democracy to our society. I could not have AI generated a better image for you about the choice that is not general conservatism in America today. If you are a classical liberal, if you are a traditional rhino Republican, if you are a Bush Republican, if you are a MAGA person, if you remotely have a brain and a soul, you should be sprinting in the other direction than these people. Because your other option is to normalize religious jihad warfare, radical Marxism, violent assassination and execution of your political enemies, even though they're not really your enemy, just people you disagree with, and to throw up peace signs and laugh and call that peace and democracy. I hope you are as unsettled by that as I am. And you realize the need to say, there is no opportunity for legitimate coexistence with this type of call to violence in America in 2025 or beyond. Especially with so much insanity in the world, it's never been more important for good people to become entrepreneurs and to start their own businesses. But that can be an incredibly confusing process, and it often feels like you have way more questions than you could ever possibly begin to answer. Thankfully, that is where our sponsor for today, Shopify, comes in. Shopify powers millions of businesses worldwide and handles 10% of all U.S. e-commerce, supporting everyone from major household names to entrepreneurs to even just people starting out. Even if you can't design a website at all, you are covered right from the beginning with their beautiful, ready-to-use templates that can match your brand's unique style. If you need extra help along the way, their AI tools are specifically built for commerce and can assist with everyday tasks like enhancing your product images, writing compelling product descriptions, or even generating discount codes. Worried that people haven't heard about your brand yet? Shopify makes it incredibly easy to find your customers through easy-to-run email and social media campaigns that help to get your name out there. And if you ever get stuck or you ever have any questions, you are never alone. Their award-winning customer support team is available 24/7 to help share advice to guide you through any challenges that you might face. Turn your big ideas into with Shopify on your side. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/Isabel. Go to shopify.com/Isabel. That is shopify.com/Isabel. The thing is, this matters. This really matters because what we accept as tolerable in today's society becomes normal tomorrow. When we see these images and we post them on social media and we laugh and we say, oh my gosh, what a singular, isolated, crazy person, instead of logically using our brains and our powers of observation to say, this is no longer a singular, isolated, crazy person. This is the mainstream ideology of the American political left today. When we fail to say that out loud, it becomes normal like that. Those of us who have been incredibly outspoken in the conservative movement for the past decade or so have been warning, actually, let's be honest, screaming from the rooftops that the more you raise the temperature in our country by calling an entire side of the political spectrum evil, white supremacists, transphobic, Nazi, Hitler Youth, literally Adolf Hitler, the more people are going to genuinely believe it. I wrote about this in my first book that I published in 2021 about how crazy this was getting on college campuses that are now apparently battlegrounds where you could be executed because people genuinely believe you are an agent of evil if you say people should be free to speak their mind. We should be free to disagree with each other in this country. The most basic tenets of a free society. When you have watched the American left point at Donald Trump and say Hitler, 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 Nazi, 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 and nobody pushed back on that. We said, okay, that's crazy. Ha, you're psychotic. But we didn't immediately shut that down and say, whoa, unacceptable. You have watched the temperature rise in America over the past decade to extend that level of finger pointing, labeling, and all out putting a political target of violence on the backs of so many people that now, slightly less than half the country, their loudest voices are calling for the murder and attack and execution of the majority of the country. And I'm not showing you all of this footage and showing you all of these images and walking through these examples with you to claim that every single person on the American political left espouses this affinity for violence. Because honestly, I don't think that that's true. Though I do think we're incredibly naive about how many people actually do espouse this type of violence and genuinely believe this. I show you all of this to say that this behavior and these beliefs are far more mainstream than you ever realized, than even I ever realized until last weekend. And the reason for that is because of how unbelievably powerful indoctrination and propaganda has become in America throughout our lifetime as a generation. And this escalates far, far beyond people holding horrifying posters and wearing terrifying t-shirts and openly jeering at the violent death of their political opponents and making fun of people being shot in the neck. This is setting the standard for how our children will grow up to view other people. And it is setting the standard to dehumanize half the country, 50% of the country, members of your own family, because of their most deeply held values and how they choose to freely exercise those values in a constitutional republic. Beyond the woman pretending to shoot herself in the neck, who hopefully has been fired, please, again, call Nathan Hale Elementary School and let's make sure that that is the case. One of the most disturbing videos I saw from these No Kings protests was the one I'm about to show you of a family who took their son, their child, to one of these protests and taught him how to violently beat and stab a piñata of Donald Trump in the name of, I don't know, saving democracy or peace in our society. This is disturbing stuff. And I want you to watch this video and tell me what you think about it. High fives there, exchanged at the end. From father to son. High five, kiddo. This wasn't, haha, let's go hit the piñata and get all the candy out. This was like violent stabbing. Stabbing in effigy, if you will, of the current sitting president of the United States, dressing your child in black masked Antifa-style garb, and then high-fiving your child after they've brutally beaten the president of the United States. This is happening in America. And this is, make no mistake about it, the exact same behavior that we see terrorist organizations and authoritarian regimes indoctrinate children with in the Middle East, with their call for death to America. This is no different from Iranian children's pageants reenacting terrorist attacks on the United States, or Hamas-style Palestinian education for young children reenacting 9/11 and calling for death to America, death to the infidels. I guess there's one difference. It's not happening driven by terrorist regimes who genuinely want our society wiped off the map. It's happening within our own borders. And we are failing to acknowledge it for what it is. The radicalization of half the country to the point of murder and violence and assassination. And there is no way to coexist with that. It has got to be stopped now if we remotely have any semblance of hope of living in a United States of America again. Beyond being just jarringly shocked by how brazen these calls for violence are today, if I learned one thing from the No Kings protests this week, we're hopefully, because of the older demographic of the number of people attending this, witnessing the last generation in America who just blindly believe everything the TV man told them. At least I hope. And I pray that we are. Because that is exactly what we saw come to fruition on America's city streets across the country with 7 million people. It's not a low number. Dressing up as Charlie Kirk's assassin, beating Donald Trump in effigy in piñatas, shooting themselves mock in the neck to laugh at the most high-profile assassination in 50 years in our country on an American college campus, supposedly a gun-free zone, by the way. To say that anybody who is a Nazi, aka conservative, needs to be violently killed. This is the symptomatic result of what happens when you just constantly listen to the droning propaganda in your ears. And propaganda is still out there. It may not be as effective as the programming that used to exist through newspapers and television, but it is still there. We have all seen the horrifying videos. I think I showed it to you on the very first episode of this show, actually, a few weeks ago, of every local television outlet reciting the identical dystopian teleprompter warnings about social media being a danger to democracy and how misinformation is such a horrifying threat to society. That, of course, is what the older people are listening to. But the threat still continues. And the only way to curb the powerful intoxication of propaganda is more speech, is free speech, is the peaceful disagreement of our political values, is dialogue, is sitting down to have a conversation and change my mind style events. That's it. Otherwise, we're going to see the eerie repetition of the democracy is in peril from misinformation teleprompter readings on your local TV cable station, on social media too, and on podcasts too, and in whatever the venue we communicate ideas as a society becomes too. Earlier this month, somebody posted a video, this went viral from Greg is Fire on X, of left-wing influencer Harry Sisson, who I'm going to be on Piers Morgan with, I think tomorrow, which is very exciting. Tune in for that. And some other guy who, frankly, I've never seen his content before. I think his name is Aaron Parnas or something. Reciting literally the exact same script on a super authentic TikTok video. Listen to this.
Trump is now calling for Kamala Harris to be prosecuted and thrown in jail. In a new statement on Truth Social, Donald Trump said, "I'm looking at the large amount of money owed by the Democrats after the presidential election, and the fact that they admit to paying probably illegally $11 million to singer Beyonce for endorsement."
So, do you guys believe in propaganda yet? I knew these guys, Harry Sisson and Aaron Parnas, were getting a script, but the DNC, like the Democrats, they're not smarter than this. If there's any agency out there paying influencers on the left, they need to do a better job. And I'm not saying
amen. We can cut that right there. We can spare you all the rest of the commentary there. Yeah, amen. Propaganda is alive and well. Not just on TikTok. Of course, we know that our universities have been pro-Marxism indoctrination centers for decades across the United States of America, at the bidding, by the way, of the Communist Party, as we talked about weeks ago on the very first episode of this show. It's why 94 out of the top 100 colleges in America made statements about how horrifying the death of George Floyd was in 2020, but only 17 of the top 100 colleges and universities in our country have made statements about Charlie Kirk and his assassination, even though his execution was a direct assault on the very purpose of their institutions, on academic freedom and difference of opinion and exposing yourself to new ways of thinking. Propaganda is alive and well in Hollywood. Propaganda is alive and well in politics. Propaganda is alive and well in many facets of the American church. The question is, are we content to become a generation like the boomers that took to the streets on the No Kings protests on cities across America's soil, to be sheer useful idiots who believe all of the propaganda and whatever the loud voice is telling you? Maybe not the TV man, but the TikTok man, or the professor man, or the Hollywood man, or the pastor man? Or are we going to say, enough? A true free society has to be based in our ability to disagree. Propaganda is still out there, and I think we owe it to ourselves to ask ourselves, where the hell is it coming from? Where is it coming from? At the very least, so that we and that our kids have a fair level playing field to have an open dialogue about the type of society we even want to live in the first place. In the aftermath of these protests, this graphic from No Kings New York City ended up going viral on Twitter about the sponsors of No Kings NYC. And some of these are the same sponsors for the national movement, but some of them are specific to New York City. I don't have the circled version pulled up for you right here, but as you can see, the Democratic Socialists of New York were a sponsor of No Kings NYC. CPUSA, which I'm assuming stands for Communist Party USA, Freedom Socialist Party, sponsor of the No Kings NYC rally, and every other insane left-wing organization like the ACLU, which obviously supports Marxism, ACT UP, all of these insane radical left-wing groups. And therein lies the ugly, brutal truth. Authoritarian socialism and communism, which is organizing this radical push to insanity for the American political left, that is responsible for the No Kings rallies, that is responsible for the rise of Antifa, that is responsible for the rise of political violence in this country, that is responsible for the assassination attempt on Donald Trump, that is responsible for the assassination on Charlie Kirk, that is responsible for the continued calls for violence for every other leading conservative voice in our country. These movements are by definition violent ideologies. They always have been. Throughout history, hundreds of millions of people have died, either directly by violent execution or by the effects of policies of socialism and communism, starvation, displacement, disease, so much more. The brutal truth is this: there can be no room for Marxism in a truly civilized society, in a truly progressive society, in a true free society, because it always, always, always boils down to the violent execution of anyone who poses an ideological threat to the authoritarian regime. In this case, to the left-wing billionaires who are trying to fund the grassroots calls for violence on the left, escalating all the way up to who sits in the highest positions of power in public office. Marxism is inherently at odds with human dignity. And I hope that is becoming more and more and more obvious in our own time, because obviously our attention spans and our memories are very short as human beings. We don't remember the effects of the USSR. We have no recollection of that as a society. But there can no longer be an excuse to entertain bad ideas and insane calls for violence at the risk of not offending someone. That is not a call for censorship. Don't hear me say that. To the contrary, actually, I am deeply grateful that we have these people able to openly declare their insanity in the public square. I don't want to silence these people. I want them to get louder, because the louder the demons get, the more obvious it is that we are in a fight of good versus evil, of humanity versus destruction, of life versus death. What this is a call to action for you all is getting so much louder. You have to speak up. There is no more option for that. You have to be rooted in faith in a godless society and pursuing something bigger than yourself. You should have a bunch of children and raise them in truth and morality while other people are teaching their kids to violently beat piñatas of Donald Trump. You have to create something when these people only want to destroy something. We are in the midst of a battle for the soul of our nation. And more importantly, the souls of the hundreds of millions of people within our nation. And when all is said and done, the question we all need to be asking ourselves is, what side of the fight do you want to be on?